Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the Global Defense Report. In this video, we're going to examine Russia's federal budget and how President Putin is being forced to allocate more than 42% of the country's total revenue to sustain the ongoing military operation in Ukraine. On Tuesday, November 18th, the Russian State Duma approved the federal budget for 2026 through 2028, projecting revenues of 40.3 trillion rubles, almost $500 billion and total spending of 44.1 trillion rubles. This means a deficit of nearly 4 trillion rubles. But the most concerning aspect isn't the deficit itself. The real issue for Russia lies in the massive costs tied to defense and internal security. Nearly 17 trillion rubles are allocated to the war in Ukraine and to maintaining the extensive domestic security structure overseen by President Putin. In other words, about 42.5% of all projected income will be devoted to war-related expenses and internal control operations. This figure is higher than Russia's combined spending on healthcare, education, pensions, and infrastructure. So how is Putin managing to fund all of this? Where is such a massive amount of money coming from? And what does this mean for Russia in the medium and long term? In 2026, total revenue is expected to reach 40.3 trillion rubles, which is around a 10% increase from 2025. However, this is still insufficient to cover total expenditures. This increase is not due to economic growth, but rather to higher taxes imposed on Russian citizens and companies. Since 2022, revenue from oil and gas has dropped sharply due to the loss of European markets, which reduced their purchases by about 90% compared to pre-invasion levels. Before the conflict in Ukraine, oil and gas accounted for half of Russia's revenue. Now, in 2025, they represent only 20%, with the rest coming from elevated taxation. Among the measures being implemented are a progressive income tax increase for high earners, a higher corporate profit tax, and the end of tax exemptions for small and medium businesses. A major change is also on the horizon, a planned VAT increase from 20% to 22%. Starting in January 2026, the Russian government also intends to raise more funds from domestic borrowing, issuing bonds and directing state banks to purchase them. Additionally, Moscow is rapidly using up its National Wealth Fund. This fund was originally created in 2004 as a financial buffer for crisis scenarios and oil price drops. But with limited alternatives, Putin is depleting this strategic reserve, leaving Russia already heavily dependent on oil revenue vulnerable to price fluctuations and sanctions. In summary, revenue will increase by 10%, but not because the economy is expanding. It's the result of heavier tax burdens on the population and businesses, which is expected to push inflation up to 9%, while central bank interest rates remain extremely high at 16.5%. This shows that the war is being financed largely by the average Russian citizen, with military and security spending taking absolute priority. Beyond the 13 trillion rubles directly allocated to military operations, Russia's internal security system consumes another 4 trillion rubles. This includes the Rosverdia, a force created by Putin in 2016 with more than 340,000 members, as well as the FSB, the successor to the Soviet KGB. Through this apparatus, the Russian government maintains strict internal control, monitoring and neutralizing potential opposition movements at an early stage. Meanwhile, more than 80% of Russia's military budget is now classified. The military-industrial complex has become the only major engine of economic activity, with massive factories producing tanks, drones, and missiles non-stop. However, with so much money going to war and internal control, other sectors are collapsing. Healthcare modernization funding is set to drop from 123 billion rubles in 2025 to just 53 billion in 2026. And universities have lost about 70% of their investment since 2022, leading to a widespread shortage of doctors and teachers. Infrastructure projects, roads, railways, sanitation, electricity, and irrigation are being abandoned across the country. Pension transfers will be cut by 1.4 trillion rubles in 2026. Civilian sectors like agriculture, retail, construction, and tech are losing more than 2 million workers, who are either being sent to war or moving to military industries. The result is rising inflation, slower GDP growth, a weakening currency, and the gradual collapse of these vital civilian sectors. This is all creating a ticking time bomb. If oil prices fall further or sanctions tighten, such as the new Measures imposed recently, the National Wealth Fund may be exhausted entirely. The deficit would explode, government debt would spiral, and Russia could face a major fiscal, economic, and social crisis. If the war continues and the government maintains this path, entire civilian sectors may disappear, leaving only large military industries producing equipment that is immediately sent to the front lines. In this bleak scenario, Russia risks transforming into a much larger, isolated version of North Korea with very little civilian economic activity and an overwhelming dependency on its war machine. And with growing public dissatisfaction, the government may feel compelled to invest even more in internal control mechanisms, creating a dangerous, self-reinforcing cycle. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and enable notifications to stay updated on our latest reports. Thanks for watching.